what's going on? There's a mystery of how did the Indians find America, and the answer to that is, I mean, there's more than one wave of people from different places that came over. For instance, you can find from New York to Puerto Rico that they knew of each other uh, before European influence over here in America. For instance, that's just how far away that some tribes are related. Just like it's it. I think I've heard them say that basically the Polynesian types were the ones that built that, what is it, Easter Island down there, where they got uh, the big stone faces, the big long face things, and there's no people there anymore. But they find these old statues all buried there, and that's basically Polynesian type, or that's Hawaii, the Hawaiian Indians, and you got the Eskimos up in Alaska. You know what I mean? So, and then like right over there in where is it? Like the eastern section of Russia. There you got these mongoloidy looking, or that is Asian looking people, and Eskimos have a very Asian-y look to them too. But as far as my tribe, what did they say? They say that we came from the Great Sea water, or the Great Salt Sea from the east. That's if you go to Canada and you go to the east side of Canada, because I mean that's the range of the tribes here in America, and then the northern section. A lot of them have half their tribe was up in Canada, or at least relatives, like related tribes farther down the line. They live in a different area, but they have basically the similar ties or origins, or at least uh, times where they've lived with other tribes, and they've made treaties with one another where they won't attack, and they trade off basically family members so that you don't commit incest. Because if you go get wives and son-in-laws from other tribes, it helps not having incest, because that was a thing that the Indians had, a real strict regiment where they had to be real careful not to let people from the same totem marry one another, and that's one of the reasons why you find a lot of similar belief systems and mixed belief systems, is because of that tradition here, pre-European influence. But anyway, it basically says in our tribal history that they receive signs from the Great Spirit, which in Deuteronomy, or is it, what's the other one, Numbers, man, it says that God really did speak to the Israelites, and they gave them signs, and it said that there was many signs and many omens God sent to them to give them direction, or uh, direction, or maybe warn them that they're effing up. You know what I mean? There was two reasons that you get signs and warnings like that. Sometimes a sign was to save people from making worse mistakes. Other times it was to guide them to a certain area, like when there's a point where it says that there was a pillar by day, and or a cloud of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night, and that was a sign, or that the sun stood still for 3 days, or the ram in the bush was a sign from God for Abraham, for instance. Uh, or like when Jesus says to Peter, he says, "When the cock crows 3 times," that was a sign, an omen that spoke through some kind of seemingly random thing or a natural thing that there was. So, what I'm trying to speak here is that God does speak to people through signs and miracle type situations, like the water and the rock, the Meribah situation. But basically, the Indians said that there was a bird, a giant bird, that made this great loud call, and they said it was like the messenger of the Great Spirit. And they basically kept following. They said there was these rays of light that would pop up, and basically the legend is that they would follow it because it was a sign from the Great Spirit that he wanted to call the people to a council at these areas. And a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's pantheistic, animistic, paganistic worship and ideology and philosophy." When there's similar uh, tales of this in the Bible, like Jonas getting swallowed by the whale and spit up on a different far off land. If you said that to the Indians, they'd have been like, "Wow, yeah, that guy was obviously uh, he was special to the Great Spirit." That's what they would think. Anyone who had that such of a crazy of an event, an Indian would have seen that as something really special, and that would have been like something really important to your purpose for being born and living out your life. You know what I mean? Like that would have been really, really symbolic. Or like Daniel being in the lion's den. If you'd have took an Indian and showed him that, he would have been like, "Oh, for surely the Great Spirit favors this man." You know what I'm saying? It's like, and people don't really don't get that it was like they didn't attribute it to the earth, to Pan, or Gaia. They didn't attribute it to that. They attributed it to the Great Spirit. And you can read in Deuteronomy and Numbers that they even call God the Lord of Spirits. So I mean, the Great Spirit means the chief of spirits, the Father, the King, the one over the ruler of all the spirits. You know what I'm saying? Like us men, we have a spirit. Though we're in a physical, fleshy body, we do have spirit as well. And there's many times where you had people with out of body experiences, apparitions, things like that. These are just some of the ways that it seems it's got to be very true. But yeah, the Indians basically said they seen this thing shining out of the water, and they kept following it, and it eventually landed us here in America, and in Canada, and Michigan, Minnesota, and all the way right up to the edge of the Dakotas, and many of the other tribes that all the way down to Florida are somewhat related to, but not all are. Like I said, there's multiple incursions though, so some people didn't come from the same place. There's other people, like the Polynesians might have came from the West Coast, or maybe they started in South America and worked their way north. You know what I'm saying? We don't really know. I mean, I don't know their history and their like I do up here for these the Great Lakes Indians, because since I'm related to the tribe, it gives me an extra reason to pursue these not so sought after this not so sought after information here. But like, just for the sake of throwing it out there and comparing it for contrast comparison, for debate or whatever, and speculations, I keep making these videos, saying it again and again, throwing it out there just for anyone to snag up on that wants to look into it. But in Ezra, it talks about how God basically did for this northern kingdom tribe who got taken in as slaves. These guys basically conspired to leave the Assyrians' land as slaves so they could go to a new land to where they could practice their religion. It says, like, basically God made this way for them to get out of Dodge. They basically they made a bunch of flotillas and hit I think this river, and God basically reversed the tide and got them out of there, and then gave them signs for them to follow to this place. And they led them to this narrow passageway that there's deep water on the left and fire on the right. And they had to keep following this trail to the hidden land. This is it's in a book called Second Ezra. And I don't know, but like I said, man, it's just funny to make a comparison there to these things, and the understanding there that what the Indians said themselves, and what the Bible says about how the northern tribes got sent to the hidden land, and at the time, the only lands that were never mentioned biblically was the Americas. So, but Asia, the kings of the East, Africa, the land past Ethiopia, the land to the north, all that's Russia. Look, all that stuff is accounted for, and even Tarshish. That's I think that's the British Islands, and I mean, like people don't realize that the Irish people were there was a time when you could find Irish or Scottish what is that called, plaid, or what is the stuff, argyle, where they mix it with the wool and they got the skirts made out of that stuff. I can't remember what that stuff's called. It's like basically what flannel shirts look like now. They found mummies, red-haired mummies, up in the desert in between Russia and Asia, and they found mummified red-haired people with those same type of cloths, like of the Highlanders. So basically, these guys at one point in time were established in the Middle East area, and some people say that's Phoenicians, Turkey. There was white, blue-eyed, red-haired, blonde people there at one time, and they were seafaring people, and they left, and then other neighbors from the land eventually ended up taking over the land, and these guys set up shop somewhere else. So these guys are also out there floating around, and you can find some of their monuments in America. Like they found, like there's these men of old, they called them, the men who lived in these houses that were built in, they're built basically out of stones, then they were buried over with dirt, so they were dirt mound houses. And this is what the Vikings and the, I think they're called, it's Olgish or something like that. That's an old form of these guys that lived over there in Ireland and Scotland, and they were seafaring people. And some people, that's, you can find how this American Stonehenge, and this other monument in Phoenicia, which is Turkey now, how they all line up. And this is back to Canaan, and they find these things dedicated to Baal. So you can follow these different cultures, man. If you just have the right clues, man, to point you in the right direction. I mean, you won't know exactly how it happened or how it worked, but you'll see it.